Do you know which one is the best weapon from the 17 choices of the amazing Remembrance weapons? I have played 12 of these weapons that I'm going to rank them today based on my own feeling and experience. For the 5 weapons I haven't played with, I'm also offering my opinion at the end of the video. For each weapon, I have tested with all the main bosses in the sequence of Margit, Godric, Redon, Godfrey, Morgoth, Fire Giant, Godskin Duel, Mordecai, Gideon, Hurulu, Redgun, Elden Beast. You can find all the detailed build videos linked in the description. Number 12 is the Lion Great Bow. Bow builds in general are not for everyone. The fast bow attacks fast, but each arrow inflicts very small amount of damage. Great bows are good for damage, but the animation is very slow, making it difficult to fight fast bosses. Not to mention you need to farm the rune to buy or farm the materials to craft the arrows. I did manage to use a bow build to no-hit the main bosses with different great bows, with the help of a two-handed weapon for the final 2 bosses. Lion Great Bow is mostly useful to have it in your offhand to provide passive damage boost for the Redon's spears, which pairs with the highest AR bow, Golem Great Bow in the game. Most folks will use a Golem Great Bow in the main hand to use it through and through Edge of War. You can conveniently switch to Lion Great Bow in the offhand to fire Rain of Arrows, which is the default weapon skill to hit enemies from a far distance. Quickly go over all the gears we mentioned before. Any seal can work, we only need one to cast the Golden Vow and you don't need to upgrade it at all. I don't wear any armor in order to put on all the bows and the weapon while being able to medium roll. This is a level 120 character. We have 30 points in vigor, which should allow us to take some hits. 16 points in mind and 17 points in endurance is good enough. 49 points in strength with plus 5 from Godric's Great Rune, we will have 54 strength. As we two-handed the bows, we are getting the 80 strength soft cap. 45 points in dexterity to further increase our weapon attack rating. We don't need any point in intelligence or arcane. 25 points in faith is only to be able to cast the Golden Vow spell. The Rain of Arrows damage can be very good if all of the arrows hit the target, such as in this Elden Beast fight. Due to the unpopularity of a bow build and the Lion Great Bow often being used in the offhand to passively boost the damage output, I rank Lion Great Bow as number 12. Number 11, Hand of Millennia. This is a katana weapon, which is the same weapon with what Millennia is using. Everyone hits it when Millennia is using the waterfall dance, but how about using it in our own boss fight? When you use the weapon skill, you hover into the air and dash forward in a flurry of blades. Repeat input of the weapon skill extend the skill for up to 3 flurry of bursts in total. We dealt close to 7k damage on Godskin Duel, 9k damage on Godric, 10k damage on Morgoth, and 1 weapon skill killed Gideon. For sure, the weapon skill does serious damage. You see me doing a ton of damage using the weapon art. However, it requires to know the boss's move and the timing of the attack at the right time. Otherwise, you will be interrupted and die. I don't blame the design of this because as a katana user, it is required to know your foe's move and eliminate them in an elegant way. Simply spamming the weapon art is not acceptable. On the other side, as a katana weapon, the simple slashes, including both light and heavy attacks, will do ton of damage, not to mention its native 50 bleeds build-up. And to me, the moveset of the katana slashes is just so stylish, which is addictive just by watching the moves. The downside is that we will need to defeat Millennia herself to get this weapon. However, it is very easy to build the character by simply focusing on the dexterity. Worth mentioning that this weapon requires 48 dexterity to be able to wield it. The most important stat is dexterity with enough endurance to use the weapon skill. As the waterfall dance attacks are considered as consecutive attacks, we use the talismans and surely correct the tier to boost our damage to the roof. This is a cool weapon with cool weapon skill, due to the fact that it is hard to get and you need to fight the exact moment to fire the weapon skill. It is not really an easy weapon to wield, hence I rank it as number 11. Number 10, Star Scourge Great Sword. Star Scourge is an interesting colossal sword because you can power stance it with only 1 sword. Yes, you heard it correctly, you don't need 2 swords to power stance. The power stance hits twice very hard, especially when you land all the hits on your foe. In my playthrough, I found out using jumping attacks, on this weapon is the most effective in terms of damage output. Star Scourge Greatsword comes with Starcaller Cry as its weapon skill. Starcaller Cry will stagger and pull in enemies in the first cast. Utilizing it again after the initial pull will bring down both swords onto the ground and produce a giant gravity explosion. The follow-up of the weapon skill has a good reach, but the cast speed is still very slow even after the buff in the previous patch. Strength is the most important stat for this build. Definitely use Raptor's Black Feathers and Claw Talisman to boost our jumping attack damage. Island Axe is used in the offhand to boost the first raw damage of the weapon skill. It is a fun to play weapon, especially the weapon skill animation is cool, which makes you look like playing a consciousness redawn. However, the damage is lacking quite a bit, being a colossal weapon. The slow cast speed of the weapon skill makes it not very practical. I rank Star Scourge Greatsword at place number 10. Number 9. Mordecai's Black Blade. Mordecai's Black Blade is a colossal sword with the power of Destined Death. The weapon will plunge the sword into the ground and then spawn a series of dancing blades to damage the enemies. In addition, the attack reduces the enemy's maximum health by 10% for 45 seconds and also continues to drain the HP for 2 seconds. This HP debuff stacks with the Blade of Death weapon skill on Black Knife, which is what we're using in this build. Blade of Death reduces enemy maximum HP by 10% for 15 seconds and also drains enemies' HP for another 5 seconds. Combining Destined Death and Blade of Death is the strongest HP draining skill in the game. A large portion of the weapon damage is holy damage, which may be a red flag for a lot of people, simply because a lot of bosses in the game have super high holy damage resistance. However, the weapon skill deals split, physical and holy damage depending on our stat investment. Faith increases holy damage and strength and dexterity increase physical damage. You can invest in strength first and then put more points into faith later in the game. The most important stats are strength and faith. You can wear Mordecai's armor set to cosplay him. This is really cool. Increasing the weapon skill damage, charged attack damage and holy attack damage will be the focus of our gears. Unlike Bleed and Rot can be immune by many late stage bosses, Destined Death cannot be immune by anything in the game. This makes it very effective in fighting large bosses that has a lot of HP such as Elden Beast. Both beast scaling with strength and faith makes the weapon itself do a ton of damage. All of these makes Mordecai's Black Blade ranked as number 9 on the list. Number 8. Dragon King's Crack Blade. Dragon King's Crack Blade is a heavy thrusting sword, comes with an interesting weapon art that can deal up to 69 poise damage if all hits land on the foe and no other weapon can match this in the game. Check this out. The weapon skill tracked along the moves of the Beast Clergyman after flying quite some distance and landed the last hits on him and staggered him. This is very impressive. We mainly focus on using the weapon skill to stagger the bosses and follow up with a huge punishment such as Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. It provides a very satisfying playstyle. With heavy investment in faith, we can use other faith incantations as needed. The most important stats are faith and dexterity for this build. For the gears, we focus on increasing weapon skill damage, charged attack damage, and holy attack damage. Ritual Shield Talisman gives us a lot of defense while using the weapon skill, not being afraid of being hit. The weapon also attacks fairly fast in the combat to deal with mobs and bosses that need quick action, as both the weapon and the weapon skill scale with faith. We maximize on faith investment. Both the weapon skill and, for example, the Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike incantation are chargeable, so using Godfrey icon has the synergies to boost the damage of both, which is very nice. Lastly, the weapon deals more damage to Dragon and Ancient Dragon type of enemies. Given it is a fast attacking weapon and having highest potential poise damage, Dragon King's Crack Blade is ranked number 8 on the list. Number 7. Marika's Hammer. Marika's Hammer is a hammer weapon and you need to defeat Elden Beast to obtain it. In the NG Plus playthrough, this weapon really shines on breaking everyone's stance everywhere, using this weapon art called Gold Breaker. Yes, even Redawn, who probably has the highest stance in the game, kneels in front of this weapon. Gold Breaker's damage scales with the weapon AR and deals both holy and physical damage. We can determine what type of damage we want to inflict by investing in different stats. Holy damage increases with faith investment and physical damage increases with strength and dexterity investment. The real reason this weapon arts shine is that it deals a massive 40 poise damage with fairly quicker animation compared to other skills or attacks that can do this huge amount of poise damage. The most important stats for this build are strength and faith. For the gears, we focus on increasing the weapon skill damage, charged attack damage, and physical damage. As a hammer, you can combine the weapon's charged heavy attack with the weapon skill to break every boss's stance. Stance breaking combined together with its stunning visual makes this weapon really fun to play with. Marika's hammer is ranked as number 7 on the list. Number 6. Charon Regal Scepter. Charon Regal Scepter has a very high requirement of 60 intelligence to be able to wield it. It is the most powerful staff for 69 intelligence and above. Below 68 intelligence, Academy Glintstone Staff has higher damage scaling. Lucette Glintstone Staff always has the best damage scaling, while with the downside of increased FP cost by 50%. I was using the Lucette Glintstone Staff in the video for a Charon Slicer build. You should use Charon Regal Scepter when the FP is a concern. It can definitely be used by many magic builds. Also notice that Charon Regal Scepter boosts the Full Moon sorcery by 10%, which includes both Renana's Full Moon and Rani's Dark Moon. The most important stat for this build is definitely intelligence. The gears focus on increasing the sorcery damage as well as magic damage. Heavy armor helps a lot on the defense. Charon Regal Scepter is very strong in the early and middle games. In the end game, depending on your build, you will eventually use other staffs such as Lucette Glintstone Staff or Academy Glintstone Staff to get higher damage. It is number 6 on the list in my opinion. Finally, we are looking into our top 5 Remembrance weapons on the list today. Number 5. Morgoth's Cursed Sword. Morgoth's Cursed Sword's weapon skill, Cursed Blood Slice, has a very stunning visual effect. When the weapon skill starts, you charge forward to deliver a downward diagonal slice, leaving a bloody trail followed by a burst of flame. Additional input allows for a follow-up attack. It deals with fire damage with an explosion, which is effective to many enemies in the game. The weapon itself has passive bleed build-up, but unlike the Blood Flame Blade weapon buff, its weapon skill has no bleed build-up at all. I played with this weapon by power stancing with another curved great sword to deal with different situations. The most important stats for this build are Dexterity and Arcane. The gear focuses on fire damage and the weapon skill damage. Bloodlord's Exaltation boosts our damage whenever the bleed happens. Since patch 1.0901, the weapon skill's poise damage has been reduced. It also has a very high requirement of 35 dexterity. Overall, the damage is not great, but it is totally okay. I feel like I need a power stance with another curved great sword to compensate on the damage. Anyway, it is a very fun weapon to play with, especially with its weapon skill, which deals a lot of damage when used correctly. Morgoth's Curved Sword, our number 5 on the list. Number 4. Wind Greathorn. Being a great axe with its unique weapon skill to debuff enemies to take 15% increased damage, Wind Greathorn's two-handed charged heavy attack hits like a truck. It also breaks bosses' stances fairly easy. Morgoth, Fire Giant, Orelu, and even Elden Beast. Many boss fights ended much faster than I expected originally before I tried this weapon. Wind Greathorn's weapon skill Soul Staffler creates an area around you to debuff enemies whoever walks into it and make them to take 15% more damage. Instead of being a buff, this skill is a debuff, which means it can be stacked with many buffs that every build is already using. It makes me thinking, should we use it to debuff at the beginning of the fights for every build? The weapon attack rating scales with strength and dexterity. Both stats seem to scale well when the attribute value is increasing. We will focus on maximizing these two stats and using its two-handed charged heavy attack for the playthrough. I might have some recency bias here as I just used this weapon in a playthrough. This might be a surprise. However, its great damage and stance breaking with the heavy charged attack together with the debuff using its weapon skill has made it number 4 on our list. Number 3. Grafted Dragon. Grafted Dragon is a fist weapon that can only be equipped in one hand. Its charged heavy attack has very quick animations. One idea to play with this weapon is to wear very heavy armor, ideally with 51 plus poise, and keep hitting the boss like no tomorrow until we break their stances followed by critical hits. Due to the fast R2 attack animation, we are likely to break the stance of every single boss in the game. Notice the downside of using a fist weapon is that the attack range is very short. However, Grafted Dragon has an interesting weapon skill called Bear Witness exclamation. I don't know why there is an exclamation at the end of the name, but when we cast the skill, there's no Bear Witness at all. The weapon skill grabs a fire dragon from the underground and thrusts it into the sky. Hit the enemy in close range, spreading fireballs in front of you. The lava left on the ground will keep damaging enemies for a short period of time when they work on it. The weapon attack rating scales with strength, dexterity, and faith. However, the weapon skill scales only with faith. We decided to focus on the weapon skill damage while using the fast charged attack to stagger the boss as needed. Fist weapons were heavily buffed after patch 1.09. Being the only fist weapon among the Remembrance weapons, Grafted Dragon won't let you down. It ranked as number 3 on our list. Number 2, Morgwyn's Secret Spear. Morgwyn's Secret Spear allows you to kill like the Blood Lord by using its Ashes of War Blood Boon ritual. You can use it from a good distance to the bosses and kill them easily by a couple of casts. One advantage is that you can even use the Ash of War behind the wall and it is still able to hit. This is very good to take out multiple mobs in the open world. The Ash of War deals very good fire damage. You know there are just so many bosses that are weak to fire in the game. However, each cast takes time and is slow comparing to other builds. The weapon itself has good attack rating as well as decent range. You can use it to take out mobs as well as when you want to interrupt attacks or when the time does not allow you to use the Ash of War. This is a quick view of all the items used. You can get the weapon by killing the Blood Lord boss. This is fairly late in the game when you become capable of killing him. However, you can cheese the boss to get it very early in the game if you want. I have a link in the description. The most important stats are Arcane and Vigor. You can keep other stats to just meet the weapon requirement. Awesome weapon skill together with the good weapon damage has made Morgwyn's Secret Spear number 2 on our list. Time to reveal our number 1 today. No wonder it is Blasphemous Blade. Blasphemous Blade is a great sword with unmatchable power. We need to talk about its weapon damage first. The weapon has B scaling in faith, while it also has C scaling with both strength and dexterity. With our stats mainly in faith, and even only with the minimum required points in strength and dexterity, this weapon itself hits like a truck. The weapon skill Taker's Flames has a really long range, which allows you to hit enemies from far away. It deals purely fire damage and only scales with faith. When you connect your weapon damage with the weapon skill damage, it deals insane damage such as this hit with Market, 4400. The weapon skill is also the best skill in-game to restore your HP on hit, which restores 10% of maximum HP plus 150 flat HP. Not only that, it heals 4% of your maximum HP plus 40 flat HP on every enemy death when held even in offhand. With it, you will be made very hard to die. This is a very good weapon for beginners. The most important stat for this build is Faith, with strength and dexterity just meeting the minimum requirement of the weapon. The gears focus on boosting weapon skill damage and also fire damage. Believe it or not, the weapon skill can also break the boss's stances quite often. With this weapon, you can hit the enemies from both close and far distance with huge amount of HP restoration. It is ranked as our number 1. Here is a quick summary about my opinion on the rest of the 5 weapons I haven't played with. Axe of Godric and Axe of Godfrey both deal physical damage. They all scale with strength and dexterity. On the wiki, I didn't find their damage to be amazing. They have some interesting weapon skills, but both of them look incredibly slow. I think the majority of the fight would be focusing on using the charged attacks. I could be wrong, but so far I don't find enough interest to play with them. On the other side, cosplay Godfrey might be an interesting idea. Giant Red Breed has a cool Ash of War which allows you to swing a fire-based whip in a large range. However, the damage is lacking a bit. Dealing 20 stance damage is not impressive either. The whips in general has shorter attack range and deal less damage than other weapons. Unlike the Urumi whip which has a unique strong R2 attack, I haven't found anything particular to Giant Red breed yet. Bastard's Stars is a flail weapon. Its charged attack animation takes a long time to complete. It has a weapon skill called Nebula, which shares the same name as the Wind of Estal's weapon skill. However, Nebula on Bastard's Stars seems to have a longer animation time and cast and hit less than Nebula on Wind of Estal. I haven't figured out why using this weapon instead of Wind of Estal yet. Sacred Relic Sword is another great sword. It deals both physical and holy damage. As many bosses in the game have high resistance to holy damage, I haven't tried it yet for a playthrough. The only use case for me is to use the Wave of Gold weapon skill to farm these monsters in Morgan's Palace. According to Wiki, you can get around 6 million runes per hour with the Golden Scarab Talisman. This concludes my ranking of all the Remembrance weapons in Elden Ring. Hope it helps you to pick the Remembrance weapon to play and have fun. Again, the ranking is simply based on my own experience. It may not align with your opinion due to our different playstyles. Welcome to leave your comment below and share the facts that I might missed. Thank you for watching.